The Richie Allen Radio Show live from Salford in Greater Manchester. It's freezing here. It's freezing cold. It's wet. It's miserable. It's Manchester. I can't wait to speak with my next guest. Delighted he's coming back on the show. He was on with us last year for the first time. I'm thrilled he's back. I've known him without knowing him for many years because of his brilliant films. When we did the newspaper review show this morning, we talked on YouTube about the Daily Mail story today about the release of the graphic autopsy photographs from, the Jeffrey Epstein autopsy. And they are pretty grim and gruesome photographs, aren't they? We're going to kick off with that. Let me introduce my guest. You know him very well. His YouTube channel is absolutely brilliant. Check it out. It's youtube.com/InfoWarrior. Again, I know that many of our listeners are well aware of who he is. youtube.com/InfoWarrior. He's made films like Invisible Empire, Fabled Enemies, and the life-changing Loose Change. Top man. And on InfoWarrior on YouTube, he deals with terrifically important subjects, again, in a way that you don't get it dealt with on MSM mainstream media. Let's welcome back to the program and say Happy New Year to the one and only Jason Bermas. Happy New Year, my friend. How are you?
Happy New Year to you, my friend, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
It's the truth. It's brilliant. I won't go over old ground, but when we spoke last year, I was in proper fan mode talking about Loose Change and the difference that made to my life. But anyway, you're a lot more than that. And a lot more has happened since then. Hey, listen, I didn't get to watch. You nearly caught me out there. As I was doing my bits and pieces today, I was on your channel and I saw the link to the video about the Epstein autopsy photographs. I'm going to watch it later on. I haven't had a chance to watch it, which I would ordinarily do thus far. But I'm going to put a link to it on Twitter now. Jason has done a kind of an examination of this story in the last 24 hours about the Epstein autopsy photographs. They're a bit grim, aren't they?
Well, I'm glad they're out, number one. And I think that this is a reason that we still need the mainstream media. Let's not get it twisted. Obviously, they are liars on a scale we can never imagine. But once stories break like this, or during stories breaking, we often need sources to get in there that have resources that we don't, that can get these photographs of inside of his cell, of his dead body. And I'll say this, it makes it even more or less likely that supposedly Epstein was extracted. Now, we don't just have the New York Post photographs, but they go in line with this. I go over it. His face is kind of purple. And when you look at the neck wound, number one, it's pretty apparent he must have been bleeding. That doesn't look like just bruising. And number two, it's on a lower part of his neck where if you would have thought it would be hanging, obviously it would be on an upper portion of his neck as well. I mean, there were a ton of anomalies. It's a 14-minute, 60 minutes piece. They actually have a bonus piece, which I recommend as well on their website, but it shoots darts in the official story, and it shoots darts into the idea that Bill Barr, our Attorney General, and remember, the Attorney General under George H.W. Bush as well, the architect of covering up the BCCI scandal, is also covering this up by saying that he's seen video of nobody going in and out of that hall, and it's obvious to him that Epstein killed himself.
Let's get back to videos in a minute, because when you look at the photographs, how did Epstein get the time to make those nooses? And we'll come back to that in a second. I like what you said about this extraction theory. It annoyed me early on that certain independent media content creators were determining that Jeffrey Epstein had been spirited away to Israel. It didn't annoy me. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But they were doing it just to bash Israel for the sake of it, number one. And number two, they weren't offering any hard evidence to support it. And what you're saying is very good, Jason. Here are the photographs. He wasn't extracted. The guy is stone dead.
Well, if he was extracted, we're talking about now a multitude of people that were in on it. Let's look at the interesting information, number one. We're talking about a man that was probably dead at about 4:30 in the morning. Now, there are two guards that are being charged with this. The one guard that actually found him still has not been interviewed by law enforcement. That should raise alarm bells. Number two, in the case of a dead body, which he was, if they didn't find him till 6:30, they say he was probably dead at 4:30. Obviously, he had been dead for a couple hours. You leave the body there because there is an investigation to be had. You don't rush him to the hospital. So those are some pretty big anomalies. And of course, the anomaly of the actual camera that should have been on his cell not working either. Again, CBS did a really good piece, and I haven't really even scratched the surface of some of the other stuff they revealed, Richie.
Yeah, let's get into that in a second. I'm glad you mentioned the cameras. I saw a lovely meme on Twitter. It was a meme that showed General Qasem. I shouldn't say it's not lovely. It showed the hand of General Qasem Soleimani, and it talked about the speed of light that we got the photograph of the Iranian general, and yet we're still waiting for anything in terms of the hallway or the entrance to where Epstein was being kept. This story, I mean, you specialize in taking apart and deconstructing stories. I think this is the easiest thing you've ever had to do, is it?
It's the easiest. I don't know. It's been strenuous because, again, this is over a decade's worth of work. When we're talking about the suicide itself, is it easy? I'll say this. It's acknowledged more quickly than anything else I've ever covered. I mean, literally the morning I woke up, and I woke up to several text messages, by the way, that Epstein had, quote unquote, committed suicide. So I would go that route, but easy, nothing's easy in this game, man. When we look at the ligature that they're now showing, that's saying he choked himself. Well, there's a problem. There's no blood on it. There's no sign that it was actually used. When you look inside the cell, he had a breathing apparatus that had a long cord on it. Why wouldn't he have used the cord? And if he was on suicide watch, why was he with a ballpoint pen? There's so many questions. And one of the other things I really liked that CBS did is they confronted the lawyer of his first cellmate, which was Nicholas Tartaglione. This is an ex-cop who allegedly was caught up in some kind of a cocaine deal and allegedly murdered 4 people and buried them in an upstate New York farm. Now, Epstein's brother and Epstein's brother's the forensic pathologist Baden have both stated that Epstein said he did not try to commit suicide the first time and he was attacked by Tartaglione. Now, CBS says that as a point of fact to his lawyer, who comes off as one of the, I'd say he's slightly slimier than the creepy porn lawyer that we had to, bear through that whole Trump thing, Avenatti. I mean, this guy's a creep. He says nobody said that and there's no evidence of it.
Well, you know what was said. Jason Vermis is our guest. InfoWarrior is the YouTube channel, youtube.com/InfoWarrior. Brilliant deconstruction. By the way, I wasn't in any way demeaning or diminishing your brilliant efforts. I was making the point I can't do it. But because, I mean, even for a novice like me, when it comes to, forensically examining claims like the claim that Epstein killed himself, you look at it and you think it's absolutely dreadful. By the way, it's the only prediction I ever got right. A couple of months before he did allegedly kill himself, I mentioned to a British journalist called Tony Gosling that I wouldn't be at all surprised if Epstein wasn't found hung in his cell. It's completely untenable, Jason, isn't it, that he would have been left alone for so long. This is the most high-profile prisoner when he was alive in the United States. Nobody wanted that on their resume. You were excuse my French, you were the asshole who fell asleep on your watch and left something happen to Epstein. I mean, Jason, if it was me and you, we'd be taking speed to stay awake, wouldn't we? To make sure that nothing happens to this guy on our watch.
Well, let's be honest. If it was anybody that wasn't connected to all these powerful people, that wasn't an intelligence asset, there would have been an actual security force around him at all time and cameras all times. Listen, this suicide is the first one in 14 years in MCC. That was also revealed in the CBS piece. In fact, the entire jurisdiction only had one suicide other than Epstein's this year. That should scream corruption. And by no means did I think you were demeaning me. I was just pointing out that there are still so many obstacles out there. For instance, people that are so thinking that Trump is going to take down the deep state and he's going to save us all and all this nonsense. Bill Barr is the architect of the BCCI cover-up, as I covered in a video earlier this week, which covered up the drug running, the money of Iran-Contra, the bin Laden network, and the connections to the CIA, George H.W. Bush, his kid Neil, and others. This guy is as deep state as it gets. He started his career at Columbia with the CIA for 4 years while he got his law degree. We cannot trust him. And now that he is saying that it was definitely a suicide, the New York Post was reporting before his suicide that Barr had visited that prison. And I think that's a distinct possibility. I mean, Barr is not somebody to be trusted. This administration is not to be trusted. And people have to get beyond this left-right paradigm and this idea that superheroes reside on message boards and indictments and arrests are coming, Richie.